I got it. Oh man. Time for a nap. Hey, what's going on guys? DeJesus here. Welcome back to our annual My Cause My Cleats recap. So this is the once a year event that the NFL puts on where players are allowed to wear custom cleats that represent different charities, organizations, or causes that are meaningful to them. And it's hard to believe, but this is already the 8th year of this program's existence, and I've been fortunate enough to work with so many different players, teams, and organizations, and it is just always our busiest project of the year, and I always look forward to recapping it with you guys. So for this year, we went ahead and posted it on our Instagram to send in some of your questions that you have about the event itself, and that's what I'm going to be going through today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. What does the My Cause My Cleats campaign mean to you as an artist, and how do you approach creating cleats for such a meaningful event? It's truthfully a badge of honor for myself. Just throughout the year, even when it's not football season, this is definitely one of those things, one of those projects that people want to talk to me about most, that people want to hear about, people want to learn about. And it's one of those things that I just know I'm the most proud of, that I can say that I've been able to partake in. It's something that's growing every year. And for you to be able to throw your hat in the ring and actually participate and have your artwork featured in such a cool way, sometimes on commercials or spotlighted on TV, or when you're gathered with family, you get to say, check those out, I did that. That is just so cool, and it just means so much as an artist, so much as somebody who grew up a sports fan, who grew up watching football with his dad every week, to now be able to tell my dad, I say this every year, but Dad, check out who I did this year, and oh, check out the social media post from the team, and they actually posted, I did all of those pairs right there. I mean, it's just something that is, there's just nothing else like this, you know, and I love that it's something that I know every year I'm gonna be really, really glad to say I did it. No matter how hard it is, no matter how stressful it is, I'm glad that I was able to partake in it every year, and I never want to take that for granted, because you never know when it's not guaranteed that, what if you don't get the call next year? You know what I mean? What if you don't get as many people next year? What if all these other new artists improve and you're no longer the new artist on the block? That's always going to be the case. You know what I mean? I've been doing this for a long time at this point. So of course there's always going to be new people who have new ideas and new things that they want to put out there, and they want to be taking all of the spots that you may have. So it's one of those things that forces you, thankfully, to be appreciative as an artist and really make sure that you're always honing your craft. How do players pick you to customize their cause? So for many years, people within this space of customizing shoes and cleats have heard about this whole approved list by the NFL that has contact info for this approved list of artists that the NFL has maybe seen work from before, or who other players might have worked with, and nobody has ever really known anything about this list or how to get on there. But I've gotten many calls over the years from players themselves, equipment managers, players' agents saying, hey, you know, we got your number from the NFL, or we got your number from this list, your contact info was on there, would you work with us on this project? And I've never really seen anything about it actually get put into play until last year when this photo was sent to me. So apparently within the Bears locker room, there's this sheet placed on all of the players' chairs where they could actually sign up for My Cause My Cleats, and they could choose to work with me as an artist, or Souls by Sir, or maybe they have their own artist that they want to work with. And this was just absolutely, this was one of the most surreal, mind-blowing pictures to have ever come across my desk, where every player in the Chicago Bears, my hometown team, locker has my name on there, and they can just check a box and say they want to work with me. I mean, that is, it really is hard to comprehend, and it is something that is just so cool beyond belief, that I know it's something so small. It's just a little piece of paper, but players can select, I want to work with this guy, without knowing anything about me or anything like that. But you know what? Let's go ahead and let's select them. My name is on a list in a Bears locker room. You know what I mean? That's just crazy. That is every artist's dream who wants to do something like this, to have it be that easy, that all they need to do is check that box and then they can work with you. It's so cool. How many did you end up doing? We ended up doing about 50 pairs total this year. However, this was far and away the shortest time span we were ever given for this project. Usually we have an entire month dedicated to it, but this year we only had about 2 weeks from when I received most of the cleats to when they all needed to be delivered. For whatever reason, this year it was kind of during Thanksgiving week for the NFL. Usually it's in December, but it's just crazy because this was the first year in many years where I was actually able to be present with my family during Thanksgiving. Usually that's kind of like the weekend before almost all of the cleats need to be delivered and shipped out and whatnot. So I'm usually thinking about how much work I still have ahead of me. So it was great to actually be present this year. Did someone reach out to you to do their My Cause My Cleats, or how does someone go about getting in? So I'll just share my experience of how I sort of started working with the two main teams that I work with. For the Jags, I actually had worked with Malik Jackson, one of their players, years back, and every single week I would communicate with the equipment manager on what we were going to be doing for the week. And all of a sudden that year, when My Cause My Cleats ran around, he said, hey, do you want me to sort of pass your contact info around to some of the other guys and go about it that way? And I said, of course, absolutely. Thank you so much for doing that. So I had already established a relationship with one of the players. I just got my foot in the door with one person and the equipment manager, and it really spread throughout the team that way, organically. And then for the Bears, I just happened to be reached out to from somebody. I got an email one day saying, hey, I'm with the Bears. Would you want to participate and sort of be our lead artist for My Cause My Cleats? And that was a mind-blowing email to receive. But that just so happened to come across from them seeing some of my work on social media. So there's so many different ways. Everyone's going to have a different story. Even the two different routes that I went for sort of getting discovered by these two teams was totally different. One started with just a player, the other one was just kind of consistently posting on social media and eventually being found. What's your process for turning a cause or theme into a visual design that works on a cleat? So the first thing that I like to do is really just try and familiarize myself with a given charity or organization, take a look at their website, look at their social medias, and see what they're already doing in terms of branding. I like to see if they already have any merchandise. What do their social media design graphics look like? That'll usually give me a pretty good feel for what their style might be and what it might look like if they were to ever have a shoe made. So then I can start actually putting something together that falls in line with what they're already doing while still putting my own artistic touch on it. What are the biggest technical challenge of painting on cleats, and how have you adapted your techniques over time? So I think the hardest part about working on cleats as a whole is just that so often they are composed of so many different materials. So you might find a cleat that has 4 or 5 different materials all packed into one tiny little area, and that might mean you have to prep all of those materials differently. You're gonna have to paint all of them differently. You're gonna need different additives. So it's just an entirely different beast than if you were working on a more standard sneaker, something maybe like Vans or Air Forces that are primarily one material type shoes. That's just not the case with cleats, so they require an entirely different process, and that's what makes them a lot more difficult in my opinion. But I'm very glad that I've had the experience to work on so many cleats over the years because they've taught me so many things that now have crossed over into the world of painting on shoes too. All of those little techniques that I use in showing videos, like using light gray to cover up branding, or that paint buildup technique where we're starting with more white in our paint and slowly adding in the color. All of that came from the world of me working on cleats, and primarily when I was doing like a lot of Devontae Adams cleats in his early years with the Packers, I would start with a not all white canvas and need to find a way to make the cleat completely yellow. So there was all these weird little tricks and techniques that I picked up along the way that I now use on shoes. So it's cool that thankfully cleats have taught me a lot that definitely applies to other realms as well. How do you stay organized between them all? So thankfully the teams do a really good job of kind of taking care of this in advance. Almost all of the boxes are going to have names on the outside. There's going to be a one-sheeter inside that again will have their name on there. It'll probably have the charity or organization they're representing. It might have any additional design requests that they might have, any logos, names, numbers, any of that stuff that they want to include within their design. And just because quite often there's so many of them, and usually I kind of do the Bears and Jags at the same time, I like to maybe have the Bears sectioned off this way, the Jags sectioned off that way, just so that when it comes to delivery or shipping day, I'm not accidentally mixing up any of the boxes. How do you balance creativity and practicality when designing cleats meant to be both wearable and impactful? This is when that topic of restrictive designing that I sometimes talk about really comes into play, because you might not be able to do the same exact design that you would do on one cleat on another cleat just based off the silhouette or the shape or even the materials that the cleats are made out of. So for example, it would be a really bad idea to take an all black cleat and say to yourself, I want to make this cleat completely yellow or neon pink. It would just require far too much paint that the cleat itself would no longer be wearable. So sometimes it's okay to say that this isn't a completely blank canvas. I do have to work within certain restrictions here, and then just start to shift your thought process to how can I actually work with what I already have in front of me and not just view this as a true blank canvas, like I said. What tools or materials do you use most frequently when painting cleats, and how do they shape the final product? So there is no doubt in my mind that I would never even be able to survive a project like this without having a really trusty work setup and workflow to go about doing things. And so what I mean by that is I've used the same exact airbrush for years, the Badger Patriot 105. I know exactly how to troubleshoot it anytime anything goes wrong. I've used the same exact vinyl cutter for years, and every single one of these cleats gets one or multiple stencils, so I know exactly what type of vinyl I'm going to be using. I've used the same vinyl for years. And so when you're doing a project like this, the thing that can't happen is user error or things on your end that are going to slow you down, your tools malfunctioning, or you not knowing how to troubleshoot things, you not knowing how to just sort of move on and use something else to get the same job done in the same amount of time. So it's so important that you have trusty tools that you can rely on, that you know are going to be there for you, that are reliable, and that you can count on. Like I said, it's so important that there's nothing slowing you down on a project like this, because you have to turn everything into an assembly line basically and really keep that process moving along. What do you do to get into the painting mood while painting? Is it music, movies, etc.? So I think that every artist really needs to try to find their space where they can just be completely locked in. So I know that for me, when I can put on a movie or a TV series I really want to binge, that's when the time can just really slip away from me. That's when 3 or 4 hours can go by without me even really noticing, without me ever even remembering that I need to stand up, move around, that I might actually be hungry for something like this. That's the best, when I can really just put on those noise canceling headphones and forget about everything else. And that's when I know I'm getting the most amount of work done, when I have as little distractions around me as possible. That's when I know that I'm gonna be at peak efficiency, which is totally needed for something like this. Least favorite cleat to paint? My least favorite one to paint now and forever will be any type of lineman cleat. Thankfully, over the last couple years, they have improved a little bit. Previously, they had these really weird kind of like hexagonal bumps throughout them. We had to do so many of these. They had this big Velcro strap. And now they just have this weird paneling where it just has these odd ridges that are really hard to paint. And since it's not a flat surface, although it's the biggest part of the cleat where you want to do the logos, you're not working on a flat surface at all. So stretching a stencil across all of these is quite the challenge. But nonetheless, for whatever reason, Nike does not want lineman cleats to just be easy to work with and paint. How to manage being thorough when it comes to bulk sock liner painting. So I think that this is a really interesting question, just because it's so niche to a topic like this, that when you're working with all of these different cleats that have the different materials, I actually do take the time to section off and batch off cleats knowing, hey, I'm gonna do all of the colored sock liners on these. So I know all of these cleats are gonna have a colored sock liner. All of these other ones are gonna have the factory sock liner. So let me work on all of these colored sock liners at once so that I could do all of my heat setting at a similar time. I could prep all of the paints to make sure that I have the fabric medium added to it. And really always just trying to do batch sort of task like that together at once, just so you don't forget that, oh, was that cleat, did I heat set that one? Did I ever add that additive? It would just be so much easier to forget that. So the more you can sort of section things off to do those batch tasks together, the better overall. On a scale of 1 to 100, how stressful is making all those pairs at once? Oh, easily 100. There is more stress packed into these 2 weeks of this project than there is scattered throughout the rest of the year for me. I mean, it's just not sustainable to work 16 to 20-hour days for weeks on end. And there's something that I've mentioned in a YouTube video in the past called Parkinson's Law. I've never been able to perfectly verbalize it, but it has something to do with the amount of time that you allow for a project and effort and things of that nature. But the way that I think about it for a project like this is, even though I only had 2 weeks to do all of these pairs, I know for a fact that even if I had doubled the amount of time, 4 weeks to do the same amount of pairs, I would still be working up to that deadline as well, because I would basically overextend myself no matter what to trying to do more on every single pair. And so really, no matter what the deadline is, it's gonna be super stressful when you're doing so many pairs at once. What's the most rewarding part of working on the cleats? Seeing the finished product, knowing the causes they support, or something else? What's so cool about a project like this is just how rewarding it is on so many different levels to you as an artist. I mean, first off, you're doing something for charity, you're representing a lot of great organizations and causes, and these cleats are gonna mean so much to so many people who are members of that organization. Seeing that charity or that cause spotlighted on a big stage, I mean, that's an awesome feeling in and of itself. You're also working directly with NFL players who are gonna be wearing your work in a national football game. I mean, that is still hard for me to believe after all of these years. It's something so cool to see. And also, the teams are going to be posting about your work on their social media channels. And so now all of a sudden you have a chance to have your work discovered by fans of the team who might not have found you otherwise. So I mean, there's just so many layers to this, and that it's just such a cool project that means so much to so many people, and I just really look forward to seeing the project grow each and every year. Do you wish instead of doing so many pairs you could only do one with all of that time? What a thoughtful question by my pop. Shout out to Papa DeJesus. And what's interesting about this to me is throughout most of the year, I'm really doing one-of-one stuff. I can take my time. I might have an entire week or two dedicated to just doing one pair of shoes or one project. So now, cramming all of this into here, I think that I might think differently about it if the rest of my year was just as chaotic, but because I'm kind of doing one-of-one stuff throughout so much of the year, I think that this is kind of artistically challenging, that I like to force myself to do it. I'm excited when I know it's coming. It's hard when you're in the middle of it, but I do look forward to it every year because it does force you to think differently as an artist. So would I love more time to spend with each and every pair? Of course. When I have the opportunity to work with a really special player, do I wish that I had more time, that I could just come up with the most elaborate design ever? Absolutely. But I think that it's really cool to put yourself into these different challenges as an artist. It really just helps make sure that things never get boring for you. It really helps you challenge yourself and continue to push those boundaries and just never get bored and always continue to sharpen your sword, as they say. Is it still worth it? So this is actually a funny question from my man Joe, who I can promise you guys, there is no human on this planet who paints more cleats for NFL players than him. And I can't even imagine how he does it around this time of year with this project added on to all of that. It's just crazy, but I'm sure he would say the same thing, that when the project's finally over and when you see it all start to get unveiled on social media, you see the teams posting about it, you see how excited the players are to actually unbox them.
Ooh. Ooh. Wow.
You see the reactions from people that are working at the organizations or people who are affected by some of the charities. When you see your work finally hit the field, that's when it all becomes worth it in the long run, and that's what keeps us coming back every year. Do you have a favorite design from this year's collection, and what makes it stand out to you? I think that if I had to pick just one pair, it would be really hard to pick something that wasn't the Caleb Williams pair. I mean, to say that you made cleats for your hometown team's quarterback, the team you grew up rooting for as a kid, the #1 pick, it's an unreal feeling, and to be able to share that with your friends and family and tell everybody to check these out, make sure you tune into the game, catch him wearing these. I mean, it's a feeling unlike no other, and something that I am just so grateful to be a part of. How do you stay inspired and motivated during the intense workload leading up to the campaign? So for me, I never really feel during this project I need any type of motivation, because I always really have a fire lit under me that I know I need to hit my deadline. And for example, last year, I actually missed my deadline with the Jaguars by 1 day, in case anybody checked out last year's My Cause My Cleats recap. I feel like I let myself down, but I knew this year there was no way I could let that happen. I wanted to actually get the cleats in early if possible. But I never really struggled to have motivation for something like this. And inspiration, I try to really make sure that I take care of all that before I even get started with the painting. I want to make sure that there's no chance I run into any creative ruts down the line or hit that creative block that some artists experience. So I know that for some people, they can just dive into the design. They can just go right into the painting without even knowing where they plan to take the design. And for me, it's quite the opposite. Although I don't do a mock-up for every single cleat, what I do is this sort of weird exercise that I've really never seen anyone else do, and I don't even know how I came about it, but I kind of do these almost like color blocking schemes where I just want to have a feel for what the overall color scheme is going to look like. So I just like to lay out, hey, I'm going to be doing a gradient on this pair. I'm going to be doing a 3-color gradient on this pair. I want to see how the logo might actually look amongst that gradient. Or I might lay out, hey, I think I want to do like a camo pattern with this theme. Or maybe I'm going to be doing some striping on this theme over here. And I just like to have all of these laid out so I can just really start to have a game plan in my head for where I'm going to be going with the design. And then once I have that, then it's really just about executing. I no longer need to think about how am I going to come up with the designs. I just make sure I have all of that done in advance before I even get started. What's one lesson or insight you've gained from participating in My Cause My Cleats that's influenced your overall artistic journey? One thing that this project has definitely done for me is really help rewire my thinking into how can I create the most impactful, cool, stylistic, individual, Dylan-type design in the shortest amount of time frame. Because every single year without fail, it feels like I have less time on average per cleat to get the job done. So I really need to start thinking, how can I come up with the coolest design in the shortest amount of time frame? And just like athletes, us artists are competitive as well. So you're always trying to push the boundaries. You're trying to one-up yourself. You're trying to do better than all of the other artists around you. You want to stand out as an artist too. So I think that it's just been really cool that I know over time my thinking has started to become restricted for time constraints as well. I talk about restrictive designing all the time. That could be based off the silhouette you're working on or the materials you're working with. But being able to design restrictively based off time, I think, is a crucial skill as well, and something that's going to be very, very important when working on a project like this. Did you have to make different designs for every pair? So this year I did actually have to do every single design completely different. In the past, I've definitely worked with organizations directly where they want to order 5 or 6 pairs or so that are all going to be the same design that players throughout the league can wear. But this go around, I had to do every single one completely different. What advice would you give to aspiring artists who want to make a mark in sports customization or similar high-profile projects? So a couple years back during one of our My Cause My Cleats recaps, we dedicated an entire video to this topic, and I think that the message still really remains the same from that video, that there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. One, you could just sit back and hope that you get discovered one day somehow. Maybe you make enough noise on social media with some of your artwork and your cleats or your shoes, or maybe you already have some NFL guys that you work with during the season and it's not My Cause My Cleats yet. Maybe you're able to get them and some of their teammates. Or you could go out there and try to actually do something about it and try to get your name out there. And you don't always have to go directly to the players right away. Maybe you could reach out to someone at the team, look up equipment managers on LinkedIn. Or maybe you could ask your friends and family, do we happen to know anybody who works at the team or something like that? Or maybe you reach out to any of the organizations or the charities directly and offer up some of your services. You never know, and at the end of the day, the worst thing anybody could tell you is no, and you'll never know unless you try. All right, that was a lot of fun. Hopefully we answered a lot of your guys' questions about My Cause My Cleats. This is always one of my favorite videos to make every year. I always look forward to it, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in for another one of these. So please be sure to go ahead and drop a like on this video if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed, and now everybody get out there and just create. One more thing I gotta share with you guys. Take a look at this insane custom one-of-one jersey that I was sent by my good friend Ashby. He actually had this made by another craftsman known as Phil or P. Evan on Instagram, and wait till you guys see the back. We got the DeJesus back there, and the number 6, my favorite number. Also, Jay Cutler, Bears' best quarterback until hopefully Caleb tops him. But otherwise, this is just one of the coolest gifts I've ever been sent by a dear friend of mine, and I can't say thank you enough, Ashby. He asked me, am I gonna wear this? I said, I don't know, is this meant to be? I mean, this is just, I feel like it deserves to be framed, but I said, you know what? I got an idea. Let me wear it for this year's My Cause My Cleats video, and then I'm gonna have it framed shortly after. So without a doubt, one of the coolest gifts I've ever received, man. I can't say thank you